History is filled with the wreckage of men and women who believed they were untouchable. We see their statues in museums, their names on the spines of biographies, and their portraits in the halls of power. But if you look closely at the marble, if you read between the lines of the history books, you will find a common thread that binds the tyrant to the bankrupt CEO, the disgraced politician to the washed-up artist. It is not a lack of talent that destroyed them. It is not a lack of opportunity or bad luck or the malice of their enemies. It is something far more insidious, something that lives inside the chest of every ambitious person, waiting for the right moment to strike. It is the enemy within. It is ego. When we hear the word ego, we usually think of the clinical definition used by Sigmund Freud, the psychological mediator between our primal instincts and reality. But that is not what we're talking about here. We are talking about the colloquial ego. We are talking about the unhealthy belief in our own importance. We are talking about the petulant child inside of us that demands to be recognized before it has done the work, the voice that whispers we are special, unique, and destined for greatness simply because we exist. This ego is not a biological necessity. It is a tumor on the soul. It is the ambition that is curdled into arrogance. It is the confidence that has detached itself from reality. Consider the young man who walks into a room and immediately assesses who is beneath him. He has written nothing, built nothing, and led nothing, yet he carries himself with the air of a conqueror. He talks over others because he assumes his thoughts are more valuable. He rejects feedback because he interprets it as an attack on his identity. This is the ego in its larval stage. It feels good. It acts as a shield against the terrifying vulnerability of being a beginner. It tells us that we are already great, which saves us from the painful, unglamorous labor of actually becoming great. It is a narcotic that dulls the pain of mediocrity, but in doing so, it ensures that mediocrity is all we will ever achieve. Now consider the woman who has reached the pinnacle of her field. She has the title, the money, and the acclaim. She has won, but the ego does not vanish with success. Its shape shifts. Now, it tells her that she can do no wrong. It tells her that the rules apply to other people, but not to her. It isolates her from the truth. She stops listening to the advisors who help her rise and starts listening only to the sycophants who tell her what she wants to hear. She begins to believe that her success is a result of her innate brilliance rather than a combination of hard work, timing, and help from others. She overreaches. She gambles the empire on a whim. And when the collapse comes, and it always comes, she is left standing in the rubble, bewildered, blaming everyone but the face in the mirror. This is the tragedy of the human condition. The very drive that pushes us to aspire, to build, and to conquer is inextricably linked to the force that seeks to destroy us. We need confidence to step into the arena, but if that confidence grows unchecked, it becomes a blindness that leads to our defeat. We are tightrope walkers, balancing over an abyss, and ego is the wind that threatens to push us off. It is the enemy of what you want and the enemy of what you have. If you're starting out, ego prevents you from learning. If you are successful, ego prevents you from maintaining it. If you have failed, ego prevents you from recovering. We often confuse ego with confidence, but they are polar opposites. Confidence is a result of evidence. It is the quiet knowledge that you have done the work, that you have faced a fire and survived. Confidence is heavy. It is grounded in reality. The confident general knows he can lose, so he prepares for every contingency. The confident artist knows her first draft is flawed, so she revises it. Ego, on the other hand, is artificial. It is weightless. It is a balloon that looks large and imposing, but can be popped by a single pinprick of truth. Ego is the stolen valor of the soul. It claims the reward without enduring the struggle. In this cultural moment, we are drowning in ego. We live in the age of the personal brand, where the appearance of success is valued more than the substance of it. We are encouraged to fake it until we make it, to curate a highlight reel of our lives with consumption of strangers. We are told that self-promotion is a virtue and that humility is a weakness. We are training a generation to be fragile narcissists, people who crumble at the first sign of resistance because they have never built the internal infrastructure to support their own inflated self-image. We are building skyscrapers on quicksand, but there is another way. It is the path walked by the quiet professionals of history. It is the path of William Tecumseh Sherman, the Civil War general who refused to run for president because he knew his own limitations. It is the path of Katharine Graham, who led the Washington Post through the Watergate crisis not with bluster, but with a trembling, courageous determination to find the truth. These people were not devoid of ambition. They wanted to win, but they kept their ego in a cage. They understood that to be truly great, one must be smaller than the mission. They understood that the work is what matters, not the recognition. This book is not a manual on how to destroy your ego completely. To be human is to have an ego. It is a survival mechanism, a part of our wiring. You cannot cut it out entirely without losing your drive, but you can domesticate it. You can recognize its voice and choose to ignore it. You can build systems and habits that keep you humble, grounded, and focused on reality. You can learn to value the process over the prize. We are going to walk through the 3 stages of life: aspiration, success, and failure. In each stage, the enemy wears a different mask. In aspiration, it wears the mask of the know-it-all. In success, it wears the mask of the king. In failure, it wears the mask of the victim. We will learn how to rip off these masks and see the enemy for what it is. The stakes could not be higher. Your career, your relationships, and your peace of mind hang in the balance. If you let ego take the wheel, it will drive you off a cliff. It will sabotage your talent and poison your happiness. But if you can master it, if you can subjugate it to a higher purpose, you will be unstoppable. You will not just be successful, you will be enduring. You will be solid. So, let us begin this uncomfortable dissection. Let us look at the parts of ourselves we prefer to hide. Let us clear the mirror of the steam of self-delusion and look at the reflection with clear, sober eyes. The enemy is waiting. Now that we have identified the enemy, we must look at how it attacks us at the very beginning of our journey. We must look at the dangerous transition from dreaming to doing and the pivotal choice that every young aspirant must make. This brings us to the story of a fighter pilot, a mentor, and a simple, devastating question. Let us turn to Chapter 1, to be or to do. The year is sometime in the mid-20th century. The setting is a sterile, fluorescent-lit hallway in the Pentagon, or perhaps a smoky officers' club at an Air Force base. A young, bright-eyed officer stands at attention. He is talented, ambitious, and on the fast track to promotion. Standing before him is a man who looks less like a polished general and more like a weary boxer. He is chewing on a cigar. His tie is slightly askew, and his eyes burn with an intensity that makes most men look away. This man is John Boyd. You may not know his name, but you live in a world he helped shape. Boyd was arguably the greatest fighter pilot in American history. He revolutionized the way we build planes. He developed the ODA loop, observe, orient, decide, act, a strategic concept that is now taught not just in the military, but in boardrooms and sports teams across the globe. He was a genius, but he was also a pain in the ass. He refused to play politics. He refused to bow to incompetent superiors. He never reached the high rank of general. He died with a small pension in a small apartment. But at his funeral, the Commandant of the Marine Corps left a gloved eagle, globe, and anchor on his grave, the highest honor a Marine can bestow. Boyd had a ritual. Whenever he identified a young subordinate who showed promise, someone with a spark of brilliance, he would pull them aside for a private meeting. He would sit them down and deliver what came to be known as the Boyd Call. He would say, "Tiger, one day you will come to a fork in the road, and you're going to have to make a decision about which direction you want to go." He would point one way. "If you go that way, you can be somebody. You will have to make compromises, and you will have to turn your back on your friends. But you will be a member of the club, and you will get promoted, and you will get good assignments." Then he would point the other way. "Or you can go that way and you can do something. You can do something for your country, and for your Air Force, and for yourself. If you decide you want to do something, you may not get promoted, and you may not get the good assignments, and you certainly won't be a favor of your superiors. But you won't have to compromise yourself. You will be true to your friends and to yourself, and your work might make a difference." Then he would lean in, the smoke curling around his face, and deliver the final blow. To be somebody or to do something. In life, there is often a roll call. That's when you will have to make a decision. To be or to do? Which way will you go? This question is the scalpel that cuts through the fat of our modern ego. Most of us, if we are honest, are obsessed with the to-be path. We want the title. We want the corner office. We want the verified check mark next to our name. We want to be a founder, a CEO, a best-selling author. We fall in love with the image of ourselves as successful people. The ego loves a noun. It hates the verb. The ego wants to be a writer. It doesn't want to write. Writing is hard. Writing is lonely. Writing involves staring at a blank page and feeling like an idiot. Being a writer involves wearing a scarf, drinking espresso, and telling people about your process at parties. One is work. The other is posture. The to-be path is seductive because it offers immediate validation. It is the path of the politician who votes for a bill he hates because he wants to get reelected. It is the path of the entrepreneur who spends more time designing their business card than their product. It is the path of the student who wants a degree but cheats on the test. It prioritizes perception over reality. And the tragedy is that you can go very far on this path. You can become very famous, very rich, and very powerful while being entirely hollow. You can be a somebody who has done absolutely nothing of value. The to-do path, on the other hand, is quiet. It is often thankless. Doing something means caring more about the utility of your work than the credit you receive for it. It means being the person who stays late to fix the glitch in the code, not because the boss is watching, but because the code needs to be right. It means speaking the truth in a meeting even if it makes you unpopular, because the mission demands honesty. When you choose to do, you are choosing to subordinate your ego to a cause. You are accepting that you might be forgotten. You are accepting that you might be criticized. You are accepting that your contribution might be anonymous, but you are also choosing substance. You are choosing to build something that actually stands up when the wind blows. Boyd's question is not a one-time event. It is not a fork in a road you pass at age 25 and never see again. It is a daily roll call. Every morning, when you wake up, you face the choice again. When you open your phone and see a controversy, do you tweet something snarky to get likes, to be visible, or do you read a book to understand the issue deeply, to do the work of learning? When you are working on a project, do you cut corners to ship it faster and look productive to be efficient? Or do you delay the launch to ensure it's actually good to do quality work? When you are in a leadership position, do you hire people who are smarter than you to make the team better, to do the job? Or do you hire people who are dumber than you so you don't feel threatened to be the boss? The ego screams to the to-be path. It tells you that you deserve the recognition. It tells you that status is a scorecard. It tells you that if you aren't being celebrated, you aren't existing. But look at history. Look at the people who actually move the needle. Look at George Marshall, the general who organized the Allied victory in World War II. He was offered the command of the invasion of Normandy, the most glamorous, historic role of the war. It was a role that would ensure his place in the history books. Marshall wanted it, but he knew that President Roosevelt needed him in Washington to run the war effort. When Roosevelt asked what he wanted to do, Marshall swallowed his ego and said, "I feel that I could not sleep at night with you out of the country." He let Eisenhower take the command. He let Eisenhower become the hero. Marshall chose to do his job over being the conqueror. And because of that choice, the Allies won the war. Marshall died with the respect of everyone who mattered, but without the celebrity of Patton or MacArthur. He was fine with that. He knew what he had done. Allies won the war. Marshall died with the respect of everyone who mattered, but without the celebrity of Patton or MacArthur. He was fine with that. He knew what he had done. This is a standard we must hold ourselves to. It is a terrifying standard because it strips away our vanity. It asks us to be content with the work itself. It asks us to find our satisfaction not in the applause, but in the effort. So, as you stand at the beginning of your journey, or perhaps in the middle of it, look at the two paths. One path is paved with gold, lined with photographers, and leads to a mirrored room where you can admire yourself for eternity. The other path is dirt. It is lined with thorns. It leads to a workshop where you will break your back and dirty your hands. But at the end of the dirt path lies something real. At the end of the dirt path lies a legacy that is carved in stone, not written in smoke. Which way will you go? The most dangerous phase in any aspirant's life is not when they know nothing. When you know nothing, you are humble. You are terrified. You listen to every word your mentor says because you know that without guidance, you will drown. You are a sponge, desperate to absorb anything that will help you survive. No, the most dangerous phase comes a little later. It comes when you know a little bit. It happens after you get your first promotion. It happens after you write your first decent article. It happens after you win your first local tournament. Suddenly, the terror fades. You look around and think, hey, I've got the hang of this. I'm pretty good. You start to form opinions. You start to critique the masters. You start to think that the rules you follow to get here are now beneath you. You graduate from student to expert in your own mind. This is the moment the ego sinks its teeth in. And this is the moment your growth stops dead in its tracks. Epictetus, the great Stoic slave philosopher, diagnosed this sickness 2,000 years ago. He said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." If you believe you have the answers, you stop asking the questions. You stop observing. Your cup is full, which means nothing new can be poured into it. You become rigid. And in a world that is constantly changing, rigidity is a death sentence. To combat this natural drift toward arrogance, we must turn to a modern warrior, Frank Shamrock. Shamrock was a pioneer of mixed martial arts, MMA, in the 1990s. He was a champion who dominated his opponents with a blend of wrestling, striking, and submission grappling that was years ahead of its time. But Shamrock wasn't just a brute. He was a philosopher of combat. He developed a system to ensure that his ego never prevented him from learning. He called it the plus-minus equal system. Shamrock believed that to be a true master, a fighter must have three types of people in their life at all times. 1, the plus symbol, someone better than you. This is your mentor. This is the person who can beat you up, metaphorically or literally. This person keeps you humble. They show you the gap between where you are and where you could be. They remind you that there are levels to this game that you haven't even touched yet. If you are the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. You need a plus to destroy your delusions of grandeur. 2, the minus symbol, someone lesser than you. This is someone you can teach. Teaching is not an act of charity. It is a tool for mastery. When you have to explain a complex concept to a beginner, you are forced to clarify your own understanding. You have to strip away the jargon and the fluff. You have to reconnect with the fundamentals. The minus reminds you of how far you have come, and it forces you to stay honest about the basics. 3, the equal symbol, someone on your level. This is your rival. This is a person who challenges you every single day. If you slip up, they win. If you get lazy, they pass you. The equal provides the friction necessary for growth. They are the whetstone that sharpens your blade. Without an equal, you become complacent. Without a challenge, you lose your edge. Most of us gravitate toward one of these and ignore the others. The ego loves a minus. We love surrounding ourselves with people we can impress. We love being the big fish in the small pond. It feels safe. It feels good to be the king. But if you only have minuses, your growth will rot. You will become a tyrant of a tiny kingdom. The ego hates the plus. It hates feeling inferior. It hates being corrected. So we avoid mentors. We avoid people who intimidate us. We say, I don't need advice, I have my own style. And the ego fears the equal. It fears the possibility of losing. So we avoid competition. We make excuses. To be a student, a real student, you must maintain all three simultaneously. You must be willing to be the apprentice, the master, and competitor all in the same day. This requires a type of humility that is rare in our culture. We tend to view being a student as a temporary, shameful state that we must escape as quickly as possible. We want to be the master. We want to have arrived. But in the arts, in business, and in life, there is no arrival. There is only the path. If you attend a high school or college graduation ceremony this year, you'll almost certainly hear a speaker stand behind a podium and deliver the most cliché advice in the modern world. Follow your passion. The crowd will cheer. The graduates will nod, imagining a future where they are paid to do exactly what they love every single day. It sounds beautiful. It sounds romantic. It sounds like the secret to a happy life. But I am here to tell you that it is terrible advice. In fact, for the young aspirant, passion is not a fuel. It is a distraction, and often it is a danger. We tend to use the word passion as a synonym for enthusiasm or joy. But if you look at the etymology of the word, it comes from the Latin passio, which means suffering. Think of the Passion of the Christ. Historically, passion wasn't something you chased. It was something that seized you. It was a fever. It was a loss of control. In the context of your career, passion is often just a fancy word for excitement. It is the rush of the new idea. It is the manic energy you feel at 2 a.m. when you sketch out a business plan on a napkin. It is a feeling of being in love with a fantasy of what you could be. The problem with passion is that it is fundamentally egocentric. Passion is about you. It is about what you love, what you want, and how you feel. It screams, "Look at me. Look how much I care. Look how intense I am." Passion is flailing. It is the young basketball player who tries to dunk on every possession, but refuses to play defense. It is a writer who waits for inspiration to strike, but refuses to edit grammar. It is the entrepreneur who spends all their money on a flashy launch party before they have a working product. Passion is loose. It is unmoored. And because it is based on emotion, it is fragile. What happens when excitement fades? What happens when the work becomes boring? What happens when the first obstacle appears? Passion burns hot and fast, like a pile of dry leaves. And when it burns out, it leaves you with nothing but ash and disillusionment. History is filled with the wreckage of passionate people who accomplished nothing. They had the energy, but they lacked the direction. They were like a Ferrari with a brick on the gas pedal and no steering wheel. So, if we shouldn't be passionate, what should we be? We should be purposeful. Purpose is different. Passion is about feeling. Purpose is about doing. Passion is about you. Purpose is about something bigger than you. Purpose is not a fever. It is a cold, hard resolve. It is the engineer who spends 10 years solving a battery storage problem not because it's exciting, but because it is necessary for the future of energy. It is the civil rights leader who gets beaten and jailed not because they enjoy the adrenaline, but because the mission demands it. While passion is frantic, purpose is steady. Passion says, "I want to be famous." Purpose says, "I must solve this problem." Consider the story of Eleanor Roosevelt. She was not a woman driven by a fiery, theatrical passion. In fact, she was often shy and reserved. But she was driven by a relentless sense of purpose. She saw the suffering of the poor, the inequality facing women, and the injustice of segregation, and she decided that her life would be a tool to fix these things. She didn't work because she felt like it. She worked because the work needed to be done. She didn't give speeches to hear her own voice. She gave them to give a voice to others. Her lack of ego passion allowed her to be effective. She didn't burn out because her fuel source wasn't her own emotional state. It was the needs of the world. When you operate from purpose, you are less fragile. If you fail, it doesn't destroy your identity because it wasn't about you in the first place. It was about the mission. You just look at the failure as data, adjust, and keep going. You don't need the applause. You don't need the dopamine hit. You just need to move the ball forward. The passionate person is obsessed with the result. The book deal, the IPO, the championship ring. The purposeful person is obsessed with the process. The writing, the coding, the training. There's a concept called the reality of the grind. Passion refuses to acknowledge the grind. Passion wants a montage. The movie sequence where the hero works hard for 2 minutes of screen time and then wins. But real life is not a montage. Real life is hours of boring, repetitive, unglamorous work. If you're fueled only by passion, you will quit when the montage ends and the real work begins. You will say, "I guess I'm just not passionate about this anymore." But if you're fueled by purpose, you embrace the grind. You embrace the boredom. You understand that the boring work is the price of the impact you want to make. So, how do you make the shift? How do you move from the frantic heat of passion to the cool steel of purpose? Stop looking inward and start looking outward. The question shouldn't be, what do I love? The question should be, what does the world need? Or where can I be useful? When you focus on utility, the ego quiets down. You stop worrying about whether you are fulfilling your destiny and start worrying about whether you're being helpful. Imagine a young filmmaker. The passionate filmmaker says, I want to express my vision. I want to make a movie that shows the world my genius. I want to walk the red carpet. The purposeful filmmaker says, there is a story here that hasn't been told. It is an important story about a specific injustice. I need to learn the craft of lighting, editing, and sound so that I can tell this story clearly and effectively. It doesn't matter if they know my name, as long as they see the story. Who do you think will last longer? Who do you think will make better art? The passionate filmmaker will quit if their first film gets a bad review. Their ego will be bruised. The purposeful filmmaker will read the bad review, learn from it, and make a better film next time, because the story still needs to be told. We often think that great achievers are driven by a mania. We see Steve Jobs or Elon Musk and think, wow, they are so passionate. But if you look closer, you see something else. You see obsession. You see a mechanic's focus on the details. You see a willingness to suffer for the outcome. That isn't the giddy excitement of passion. That is the heavy burden of purpose. So, beware the feeling of passion. Beware the rush. When you feel that surge of, I am going to change the world, recognize it for what it is, a sugar high. It feels good, but it has no nutritional value. Don't let the ego convince you that your feelings are a sign of destiny. Your feelings are just feelings. They are weather. They will change. Instead, find your ground. Find a problem you can't stop thinking about. Find a skill you can master that will help others. Find a role where you can be of service. Swap the I want for the I must. Swap the look at me for the look at this. Be the tortoise, not the hare. The hare is passionate. He runs fast because he loves the wind in his fur. But he gets distracted. He takes a nap. The tortoise is purposeful. He has one goal. He takes one step. Then another. Then another. It isn't sexy. It isn't exciting. But he wins the race. Now that we have replaced the frantic energy of passion with a steady drive of purpose, we need a strategy for how to enter the world. We are young. We are unknown. And we are at the bottom of the hierarchy. How do we rise? The ego tells us to demand respect immediately, but history tells us there is a faster, more effective way, a way that requires us to swallow our pride and serve others. In the next chapter, we will uncover the ancient Roman concept of the antiambulo and the modern application known as the canvas strategy. It is time to learn the art of clearing the path. Look at Kirk Hammett, the lead guitarist of Metallica. By the early 1990s, Metallica was the biggest metal band in the world. Hammett was a rock god. He played stadiums. He had millions of dollars. He could have easily coasted on his fame, playing the same solos for the rest of his life. Nobody would have stopped him. But Hammett did something strange. He realized he had hit a plateau. He realized he was becoming repetitive. So, at the height of his fame, he went back to school. He sought out Joe Satriani, a guitar virtuoso known for his technical precision. Hammett became the student again. He went to Satriani's studio and learned scales. He practiced drills. He let Satriani critique his technique. He checked his ego at the door. Why? Because he cared more about the music than he cared about the image of being a rock star. He knew that to stay great, he had to keep becoming great. This is the mindset we must cultivate. We must be ruthless with our own knowledge. We must assume that what we know is merely a fraction of what exists. When you sit down to write, assume there is a better way to structure the sentence. Read the writers who make you feel incompetent. Study them. When you walk into a business meeting, assume you don't have all the facts. Listen to the intern. Listen to the customer. Ask dumb questions. When you look at your life, assume that your current mental models are flawed. Be willing to update your software. The ego wants to hide your ignorance. It wants to pretend you know everything so that you look impressive. But pretending to know prevents you from learning. As the old saying goes, amateurs are defensive. Professionals find learning in everything. The amateur takes feedback as an insult. The The professional takes feedback as data. The amateur wants to be right. The professional wants to get it right. So, do an audit of your life right now. Who are your pluses? Do you have mentors who scare you a little? Who are your minuses? Are you helping anyone come up behind you? Who are your equals? Are you challenging yourself, or are you coasting? If you can't identify these people, you are in danger. You are likely drifting into the stagnation of the ego. You are becoming the person who knows. Reclaim the identity of the student. Wear it like a badge of honor. To be a student is to be alive. It is to be fluid. It is to be open. It means you are not a finished product. You are a work in progress. And as long as you are a work in progress, you have a future. But as we embrace the role of the student, we run into another trap. A trap that is celebrated by every commencement speech and every pop song in the last 20 years. It is a trap of passion. We are told that if we just find our passion, everything will be easy. But the student knows that passion is often a flailing, undisciplined mess. What we need is not passion, but purpose. In ancient Rome, the streets were a chaotic, violent mess. They were narrow, filled with mud, animals, beggars, and thieves. If a wealthy patron or a powerful politician wanted to walk through the city, they couldn't just stroll. They would get dirty, harassed, or worse. So they employed a specific type of servant called an antiambulo. The word literally means one who goes before. The antiambulo's job was simple but crucial. He walked a few steps ahead of his patron. He pushed away the beggars. He cleared the debris. He shouted, "Make way!" He took the mud so his master could keep his sandals clean. He was a human shield and the path clearer. Now, imagine I told you that the secret to your success in the modern world, the secret to becoming a CEO, a great artist, or a leader, is to become an antiambulo. Your ego probably recoils at that. Me? A servant? I have a degree. I have talent. I am a leader, not a path clearer. I shouldn't be clearing the way for someone else. People should be clearing the way for me. This reaction is natural. It is also stupid. The ego wants to be the patron immediately. It wants the status, the clean sandals, and the respect. But the reality of the hierarchy is that you are not the patron. Not yet. You are young, inexperienced, and unproven. If you try to act like the king before you have built the kingdom, you will be crushed. The smartest way to rise is not to demand respect, but to attach yourself to people who are already successful and help them succeed. This is what I call the canvas strategy. The name comes from a quote by the Roman poet Martial, who complained about being an antiambulo, but centuries later, we can reframe it. The strategy is, find canvases for other people to paint on. Clear the path for the people above you. Solve their problems. Do the grunt work. Make them look good. When you do this, something counterintuitive happens. By making them look better, you become indispensable. By clearing their path, you end up walking down it with them. Let's look at Benjamin Franklin. Before he was a founding father, before he was a scientist, he was an apprentice to his brother James, a printer. James was a tyrant. He was abusive and arrogant. But Franklin didn't quit in a huff. He didn't demand to be made a partner. Instead, he wrote letters under a pseudonym, Silence Still Good, and slid them under the door of the print shop at night. He gave his brother content that made the newspaper popular. He let his brother take the credit. Why? Because Franklin was learning the trade. He was using his brother's platform to sharpen his own wit. He was clearing the path for the newspaper to succeed, which gave him the environment to become Benjamin Franklin. Or look at Bill Belichick, arguably the greatest football coach of all time. His first job in the NFL wasn't calling plays. It was analyzing film for the Baltimore Colts for $25 a week. He sat in a dark room for hours, breaking down game tape, doing the tedious, eye-straining work that the head coaches didn't want to do. He became an antiambulo for the coaching staff. He gave them the data they needed to win. Did he have an ego? Of course. He knew he was smart, but he suppressed it. He knew that if he tried to tell the head coach how to run the team on day one, he would be fired. By serving the coach, he bought himself access. He bought himself an education. He bought himself a future. The canvas strategy works because it trades short-term credit for long-term leverage. When you help someone else succeed, You are making a deposit in the bank of reputation. 1. You eliminate your competition. Most young people are annoying. They drain value. They ask for mentors. They ask for raises. They ask for attention. If you show up and give value, if you say, I fix this problem for you, and you don't even have to acknowledge me, you instantly stand out. You are not a threat. You are an asset. 2, you get an education. By working closely with master, you see how the sausage is made. You see their emails. You see how they handle a crisis. You see their flaws. This is knowledge you cannot get in classroom. 3, you gain a champion. When you make your boss look like a genius, your boss will take you with them when they get promoted. They will open doors for you. But the ego hates this. The ego screams, but I did all the work. Why is she getting the award? I had that idea. Why is he taking credit? The ego is obsessed with fairness. It keeps a scorecard. I did X, so I deserve Y. But the real world doesn't care about your scorecard. The real world cares about utility. If you are a writer, don't try to write your masterpiece immediately. Find a great writer and offer to research for them. Edit their footnotes. Run their social media. Be their anti-ambulo. If you are an aspiring executive, don't try to revolutionize a company in your first week. Find the busiest, most stressed out VP and take the most annoying project off their desk. Do it perfectly. Hand it back to them. There is a humility in this that is incredibly powerful. It requires you to say, I am not the most important person in this room, and I am okay with that. Be the person who sweeps the floor. Be the person who organizes the files. Be the person who stays late to double-check the presentation. There is a classic story about a young assistant who worked for a famous Hollywood producer. The producer was difficult, demanding, and often rude. One day, the assistant was asked to get coffee. A friend asked him, doesn't it bother you that you have a master's degree and you're getting coffee for this guy? The assistant smiled and said, I'm not getting coffee. I'm buying access to the mind of a genius for the price of a latte. That is the Canvas strategy. It is reframing servitude as strategy. The anti-ambulo is not a slave. He is an apprentice. He is clearing the path today so that he can walk it alone tomorrow. But be warned, this strategy has an expiration date. You are not meant to be a servant forever. Franklin eventually left his brother. Belichick eventually became the head coach. There comes a moment when you have learned enough, when you have built enough leverage, that you must step out from the shadow and become the patron yourself. But you cannot skip the step. You cannot leap from nobody to king without passing to the phase of service. The ego wants to skip the step. The ego thinks it is too good for the mud. And that is why the ego stays in the mud forever, complaining about how unfair the world is. So look around you. Who is the person you want to be in 10 years? Find them. Don't ask them to pick their brain. Don't ask them for a job. Go to them and say, I see you have a problem with X. I fix it for you. Here is the solution. Let me know if you need anything else. Find a canvas. Paint on it. Let them sign their name. Do this enough times, and one day, the world will hand you your own canvas. But even when you find the canvas, even when you accept the role of the apprentice, you still have to do the actual labor. And this brings us to the most unglamorous truth of all. The secret to success is not brilliance. It is not genius. It is not magic. It is work. We will strip away the romance of the overnight success and look at the tedious, repetitive, exhausting reality of building something great. We have reached a point in our journey where the romance usually dies. Up until now, we have talked about grand strategies, ancient philosophies, and the noble act of clearing the path for others. It all sounds very dignified. It sounds like a movie script where the hero makes a few smart moves, learns a few hard lessons, and then ascends to the throne. But the movies lie to us. They lie because they have to. A movie is 2 hours long. If a movie showed the actual reality of success, it would be 99 hours of a person sitting alone in a room, staring at a wall, typing a sentence, deleting it, and typing it again. It would be 20 years of a mechanic tightening the same bolt. It would be a documentary about boredom. Because the truth is that the bridge between aspiring and succeeding is not built out of breakthroughs or lightning bolt of inspiration. It is built out of work. Tedious, unglamorous, repetitive, Exhausting work. The ego hates the work. The ego is allergic to the grind. The ego wants the idea. It wants to sit in a coffee shop and talk about the screenplay it is going to write. It wants to design the logo for the startup before it has built the product. It wants to argue about the philosophy of the diet before it has eaten a single vegetable. Why? Because the idea is pure. The idea is perfect. In your head, the novel is a masterpiece. In your head, the company is already unicorn. But the moment you start doing the actual work, the perfection shatters. You write a sentence and it is clunky. You write code and it bugs out. You go for a run and your lungs burn. The work reveals your inadequacy. It forces you to confront the gap between your taste and your talent. And the ego will do anything to avoid that confrontation. This is why we have developed a culture of fake work. We mistake talking for doing. We mistake planning for executing. We have endless meetings to discuss the work. We send thousands of emails about the work. We post on social media about how hard we are grinding. But none of that is the work. That is just the friction surrounding the work. Real work is silence. Real work is solitary. It is the athlete in the empty gym at 4 a.m. when no cameras are watching. It is the writer turning down a party invitation because they have to finish a chapter that nobody might ever read. It is the terrifying, lonely act of facing the blank page, the empty canvas, or the difficult problem, and refusing to look away until it is solved. Consider the overnight success. We see a musician suddenly top the charts, and we think they appeared out of nowhere. We don't see the 10 years they spent playing in dive bars for $5 and a free beer. We don't see the van that broke down in the snow. We don't see the hundreds of songs they wrote that were terrible and were thrown in the trash. The ego loves the myth of the natural. It loves to believe that some people are just born with it. Because if success is genetic, then we have an excuse for not trying. But if success is a result of labor, brutal, consistent, unsexy labor, then we have no excuse. And that terrifies us. There's a concept in physics called static friction. It is the force that keeps a heavy object from moving. Pushing a stationary car is incredibly hard. You push and nothing happens. Your muscles scream. You sweat. It feels futile. This is a phase where the ego begs you to quit. It's not moving, it screams. You're not good enough. This is a waste of time. But if you keep pushing, eventually the tires rotate. Just an inch, then 2 inches. Then, suddenly, kinetic friction takes over and the car rolls. The momentum builds. The work is that initial agonizing push against static friction. It is a refusal to accept that the car won't move. We must fall in love with the boredom. We must realize that mastery is not a function of intensity, but of continuity. The amateur works when they feel inspired. The professional works when they feel like garbage. The amateur looks for the shortcut. The professional knows that the shortcut is a trap. If you look at the greatest figures in history, you don't find people who dabble. You find people who are obsessed with the details. You find Bill Clinton, not just shaking hands, but staying up until 3 a.m. reading policy papers that would bore a normal person to tears. You find Kobe Bryant practicing the same jump shot without a ball for 2 hours. You find Thomas Edison failing 10,000 times to make a light bulb and calling it research. This is the ultimate defense against ego. You cannot fake the work. You can fake the image. You can fake the talk. But you cannot fake the result. If you didn't train, you'll get knocked out in the ring. If you didn't study, you will fail the surgery. The work is the great equalizer. It is the anchor that keeps you tethered to reality. When you have truly worked, when you have exhausted yourself in the pursuit of excellence, you don't need to brag. You don't need to strut. You have a quiet, dangerous confidence that comes from knowing exactly what you are capable of. You know the price has been paid. S.O. Stop dreaming. Stop talking. Stop optimizing your workflow and just do the work. Shut off the phone. Close the door. Sit in the chair. Embrace the struggle. The pain you feel is the death of the ego. Every time you choose to focus when you want to be distracted, you are killing the entitlement. Every time you choose to revise the draft when you want to publish it, you are killing the arrogance. You are building something real. You are moving from the realm of aspiring to the realm of earning. And eventually, if you push the rock long enough, you reach the top of the hill. The car starts rolling. The world starts to pay attention. The accolades come. The money comes. And this brings us to a new, even more dangerous battlefield. Because if failure tests your resilience, success tests your soul. Now that we have done the work, we must face the disease that comes with the reward. We are now leaving the phase of aspiration. We are entering the phase of success. And here, the ego does not disappear. It puts on a crown. It tells you that you are a god. It tells you that you can stop learning. It tells you that the rules no longer apply. In the next section, we will see how the mighty fall and how the greatest conqueror in history avoided the trap that catches almost everyone else. We have now crossed a dangerous threshold. We have moved from the hunger of the aspirant to the satisfaction of the winner. You have done the work. You have cleared the path. You have built something real. Maybe you have made your first million or published your book or received the promotion you chased for a decade. The world is finally clapping. And in that applause, the enemy finds its opening. When we are starting out, we have no choice but to learn. We are driven by a survival instinct. We know we are small, so we scavenge for knowledge. But success does something strange to the human brain. It acts as a sedative. It convinces us that because we have achieved a result, we have mastered the game. It whispers, "You have arrived. You are the expert. You don't need to listen anymore. You are the one who speaks." This is the beginning of the end. The moment you decide you have nothing left to learn is the moment you begin to die. To understand how to survive success, we must look at the greatest conqueror the world has ever known. When we think of Genghis Khan, we picture a barbarian. We picture blood, fire, and hordes of screaming horsemen destroying civilization. We picture a brute force of nature. But this is a cartoon version of history. You do not conquer an empire that stretches from the Pacific Ocean to the gates of Europe simply by being angry. You do it by being the greatest student who ever lived. Genghis Khan was born into a fractured, warring tribe on the frozen steppes of Mongolia. He had no education. He had no resources. But he had a terrifying openness to new information. As he swept across Asia, he didn't just kill his enemies. He absorbed them. When the Mongols encountered the walled cities of China, they didn't know how to conduct siege warfare. They were horsemen. They didn't know how to build catapults or scale walls. A lesser leader, driven by ego, might have tried to force his way in or burn the countryside in frustration. Khan didn't either. He captured Chinese engineers. He treated them well. He asked them, "How do you break these walls?" He learned the technology of his enemy and turned it against them. When he conquered the Islamic world, he didn't burn the libraries. He found the astronomers and the mathematicians and asked, "What do you know that I don't?" When he encountered new religions, he didn't impose his own. He interviewed the priests and the monks to understand their philosophies. His empire was a sponge. He replaced the tribal laws of the Mongols with a meritocracy that utilized the best ideas from every culture he touched. This is the Genghis Khan principle. It is a relentless refusal to let your success make you rigid. Khan was the Khan of Khans, the king of kings, yet he remained an eternal apprentice. He understood that the world is vast and complex, and that no single man, no matter how powerful, has all the answers. Compare this to the modern CEO who has one hit product and suddenly thinks he is a philosopher king. He stops asking questions. He surrounds himself with yes men. He assumes that because he was right about one thing, he is right about everything. He stops reading. He stops studying the market. He believes his own hype. And inevitably, the market shifts. A new technology emerges, a new siege engine. And he is caught unprepared, standing behind the walls of his own arrogance. The great physicist John Wheeler once said, "As our island of knowledge grows, so does the shore of our ignorance." This is the paradox of mastery. The more you learn, the more you should realize how little you actually know. A true expert is humble because they understand the depth of their field. An amateur is arrogant because they have only scratched the surface and mistake the surface of the whole. Success creates a cocoon. It insulates you from feedback. When you are poor, the world tells you exactly where you are wrong. You go hungry. When you are rich and powerful, the world lies to you. People laugh at your bad jokes. They agree with your bad ideas. They hide the bad news. To fight this, you must aggressively seek out the truth. You must pick up books that challenge your worldview. You must put yourself in rooms where you are the least intelligent person. You must constantly expose yourself to the plus, the mentors and the masters who dwarf your achievements. You have to protect your inner student. That student is the source of your power. It is the part of you that is curious, malleable, and hungry. The ego wants to kill the student. The ego wants to wear the graduation gown and hold the diploma forever. But in the school of life, there is no graduation. There is only the next lesson. If Genghis Khan, a man who ruled half the known world, could remain humble enough to learn from the people he conquered, then you, with your startup or your promotion or your award, can certainly afford to read a book. You can certainly afford to listen to a critique. There's a lie we tell ourselves in the rear-view mirror. It is a seductive, dangerous lie that smooths over the rough edges of our lives and turns chaos into destiny. It happens after we succeed. We sit down for the interview, or we write the memoir, or we just recount the tale to our friends at bar, and we start to edit. We look back at the messy, terrifying, random path that got us here, and we draw a straight line. We say, I always knew this would happen. We say, it was all part of the master plan. We say, I made that decision because I had a vision of the future. We leave out the doubts. We leave out the near misses. We leave out the fact that we were almost bankrupt 3 times. We leave out the luck, the random meeting in the hallway, the competitor who imploded, the market shift that nobody predicted. We craft a narrative where we are the brilliant protagonist who marched inevitably toward victory. This disease is not limited to sports. It destroys bands, it destroys startups, and it destroys political movements. Success acts as a magnifying glass for our insecurities. The ego starts to keep a personalized scorecard. It convinces us that we were the sole reason for victory. We start to resent our teammates. We start to hoard credit. We start to demand special treatment. Riley called this the danger of glamour. When you are in the spotlight, you start to believe that the spotlight belongs to you. You forget that the spotlight is just a bulb, and it can be turned off. The symptoms of the disease of me are subtle at first. It starts with a lack of listening. It starts with a little bit of selfishness in a meeting. It starts with a refusal to do the small, unglamorous tasks you used to do without complaint. But it ends in catastrophe. The Lakers lost in 1983 because they were a fractured collection of individuals, not a team. To cure this, or prevent it, you must ruthlessly suppress the desire for personal glory. You must realize that credit is infinite. If the team wins, everyone wins. If the company succeeds, everyone's stock goes up. But if you fight for a bigger slice of the pie while the pie is baking, you will burn the whole kitchen down. You have to return to the mindset of the beginner. You have to remember what it felt like during the innocent climb. You have to willingly subjugate your ego to the mission. The moment you think you are bigger than the team is the moment the team begins to lose. When the ego starts to swell, when you start to feel like the center of the universe, whether because of success or because of a grievance, there is a cure. It is not a pill. It is not a therapy session. It is a walk outside. Go to the ocean. Stand at the edge of the water. Look at the horizon. Watch the waves crash against the shore, one after another, in a rhythm that has continued for billions of years and will continue for billions more after you are dead. Look at the size of the water. It stretches for thousands of miles, deep, dark, and indifferent to your existence. Or go out at night and look at the stars. Realize that the light hitting your eyes left those stars before human beings even existed. Realize that you're standing on a tiny rock, spinning in a vast, cold void in a galaxy that is just one of billions. This is what the Stoics called meditating on the immensity. The ego thrives in small rooms. It thrives in the boardroom, the bedroom, and the office, where we can pretend that our petty dramas are the most important things in the world. In a small room, you can feel like a giant. But in the face of nature, the ego shrinks. It is impossible to stand on the rim of the Grand Canyon and think, I am a big deal. The canyon laughs at you. The canyon reveals your true scale. You are a speck. You are a blip in time. This realization that you are insignificant should not depress you. It should liberate you. If you are small, then your mistakes are small. If you are small, then your embarrassments are temporary. If you are small, then the pressure to conquer the world is absurd. You can just be. You can just play your part in the great unfolding of the cosmos. We often use our ego to shield ourselves from the fear of death and insignificance. We build statues. We put our names on buildings. We obsess over our legacy. But history is a cruel eraser. Ask yourself, can you name the richest man in the world in the year 1600? Can you name the most famous playwright in Rome before Seneca? No, they are dust, and you'll be dust too. When you accept this, the need to posturing falls away. You stop trying to prove to the universe that you matter, because the universe doesn't care. Instead, you can focus on what is right in front of you. You can focus on being kind. You can focus on doing good work. You can focus on the beauty of the moment. Walk away from the mirror and look out the window. The world is huge. You are not the protagonist of this movie. You are just an extra. And that is a beautiful thing. It means you are free to enjoy the scene without the burden of carrying the plot. We usually associate sobriety with drugs and alcohol. We think of the addict trying to stay clean. But there's another kind of intoxication that is just as dangerous, if not more so, for the successful person. It is the intoxication of power, fame, and validation. Success releases dopamine. Being the boss releases dopamine. Having people laugh at your jokes, agree with your opinions, and scramble to open doors for you creates a chemical high. It distorts your reality. It makes you feel taller, smarter, and funnier than you actually are. It is a reality distortion field. When you are drunk on success, you make bad decisions. You think you can walk through traffic. You think you can bet the farm and win. You think the laws of gravity don't apply to you. This is why we see so many successful people implode. The politician who thinks he can get away with the affair. The CEO who thinks he can cook the books. They aren't just unethical, they are intoxicated. Their ego has severed their tether to the ground. To survive success, you must maintain your sobriety. This doesn't just mean staying away from a bottle, though that helps. It means staying away from the fumes of your own hype. It means fighting the distortion field. How? By keeping anchors in your life. An anchor is a person or a practice that reminds you of who you really are. Maybe it's your spouse, who doesn't care that you're the CEO, but cares that you forgot to take out the trash. Maybe it's an old friend from high school who calls you by your childhood nickname and mocks your fancy suit. Maybe it's a physical practice like martial arts, where you get choked out on the mat regardless of your bank balance. The mat doesn't care who you are. The mat is honest. You need people around you who are not on your payroll. You need people who are not afraid to tell you that you have spinach in your teeth or that your new idea is stupid. If everyone around you is nodding, you are in danger. You are drinking the Kool-Aid. Angela Merkel, the Chancellor of Germany and one of the most powerful women in the world, was known for doing her own grocery shopping. She lived in a regular apartment. She didn't have a palace. Why? Because she knew that the trappings of power are a trap. She needed to feel the weight of a milk carton to remember the reality of the people she led. You must build a firewall against your own entitlement. When you start to feel like you are too good to wait in line or too important to answer your own email, catch yourself. That is the drunk talking. Splash some cold water on your face. Force yourself to be normal. Force yourself to be humble. Sobriety is a fight. The world wants to get you drunk. It wants to flatter you into submission. Don't let it. Stay clear-eyed. Stay grounded. Stay sober. We have talked about the ascent, and we have talked about the summit. But life is cyclical. Gravity always wins. Eventually, no matter how talented or careful you are, you will fall. You will lose the job. The company will fail. The relationship will end. You will find yourself in the valley. This is the moment of maximum danger for the ego. The ego hates failure. It interprets failure not as an event, but as an identity. I fail becomes I am a failure. The ego wants to lash out, to blame others, or to curl up in a ball and die. But this moment also offers a choice. It is a choice that the author Robert Greene once laid out for Ryan Holiday during a difficult transition. He asked, "Are you going to have a live time or dead time?" Dead time is when you are passive. It is when you sit around waiting for things to get better. It is when you wallow in your misery, eating junk food, watching TV, and complaining about how unfair the world is. It is time that is wasted. It is time where you are rotting. A live time is when you take control. It is when you use a period of failure or stagnation to transform yourself. It is when you say, "Okay, I'm stuck here. I can't change the situation, but I can change myself." Consider Malcolm X. Before he was a civil rights icon, he was a street criminal named Detroit Red. He was arrested and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Prison is the ultimate dead time. You are literally in a cage. You have no power. Most men in a position spent their time gambling, fighting, or sleeping. They waited for the clock to run out. But Malcolm made a different choice. He chose a live time. He realized that although his body was locked up, his mind was free. He began to read. He read everything he could get his hands on. He realized his vocabulary was limited. So he got a dictionary and copied out, word for word, by hand. He learned history, philosophy, and religion. He transformed himself from an illiterate criminal into an intellectual powerhouse. When he walked out of prison, he wasn't a man who had lost 7 years of his life. He was a man who had prepared for 7 years. He stepped out of the cage ready to change the world. We all face our own versions of prison. Maybe you are stuck in a job you hate. Maybe you are unemployed. Maybe you are recovering from an illness. The ego says, "This is unfair. I shouldn't be here. I'm just going to wait until it's over." The spirit says, "This is an opportunity. I have time now. I can learn a language. I can write the book. I can get in the best shape of my life. I can rebuild my character." Francis Ford Coppola, the legendary director, faced a massive crisis in his 40s. His studio went bankrupt. He lost everything. He owed the banks millions. He could have given up. He could have spent years in court fighting and complaining. Instead, he chose a live time. He looked at his debt and said, "The only way out is to work." He went on a tear, directing movie after movie, The Outsiders, Rumblefish, The Cotton Club, one after another, with a manic intensity. He used the pressure of the debt to fuel his creativity. He worked his way out of the hole. When you are in the valley, you have to decide, are you going to die here, or are you going to plant seeds? The ego wants you to be a victim. It wants you to be passive so it can protect your pride. "I can't do anything," it says, but you can always do something. You can always pick up a book. You can always pick up a pen. You can always pick up a weight. Don't just serve time. Make the time serve you. Turn your dead time into a live time. Now that we have decided to use our failure as fuel, we must learn how to endure the lack of recognition. Sometimes you do the work. You use a live time, and the world still doesn't care that we are raised on a diet of justice. We are taught from kindergarten that if you follow the rules, if you work hard, and if you are a good person, you will be rewarded. You will get the gold star. You will get the A. You will get the promotion. We believe in a transactional universe. Input equals output. Good work equals recognition. But the universe is not transactional. The universe is indifferent. And people, especially insecure, powerful people, are often ungrateful. There is no greater test of the ego than to do the right thing and be punished for it, to save the day and be ignored, to win the war and be stripped of your rank. This is the story of Belisarius. Belisarius was the greatest general of the Byzantine Empire, and perhaps one of the greatest military minds in human history. Under the Emperor Justinian, he reconquered Rome. He saved the empire from the Persians. He put down rebellions. He was brilliant, brave, and infinitely loyal. He was the sword of Rome. And how did Rome repay him? Justinian was not a brave man. He was a paranoid, jealous bureaucrat. He saw Belisarius' popularity not as an asset, but as a threat. He worried that Belisarius would use his army to seize the throne. So, instead of throwing parades for his general, Justinian undermined him. He recalled him from successful campaigns. He spread rumors about him. He cut his funding. At one point, he stripped Belisarius of his command and confiscated his wealth. According to legend, the man who saved Western civilization ended his days as a blind beggar on the streets of Constantinople, asking passers-by for a coin, ignored by the very people whose freedom he had secured. Now, imagine you're Belisarius. Your ego would be screaming, "I did everything right. I won. I was loyal. This is unfair. I should burn this city to the ground." But Belisarius never revolted. He never turned his army against the emperor. He accepted his mistreatment with a stoic dignity that baffles the modern mind. Why? Was he weak? Was he stupid? No, he simply had a different scorecard. Belisarius understood a fundamental truth. You cannot control the reward. You can only control the effort. If your satisfaction depends on the applause of others, you are a slave. You are a slave to your boss's mood. You are a slave to the market. You are a slave to history. All of these things are fickle. The crowd that cheers you today will boo you tomorrow. The boss who promotes you today will fire you tomorrow to save his own skin. If you do the work for the reward, you will inevitably be heartbroken. The reward is never enough. The bonus is taxed. The plaque gathers dust. The fame fades. But if you do the work for the work, you are free. This is what Belisarius possessed. He knew that he was a great general. He knew that he had acted with honor. He knew that he had served his purpose. The fact that Justinian was too small a man to recognize it was Justinian's problem, not Belisarius's. His self-worth was internal, hermetically sealed against the madness of the outside world. We will all face our own Belisarius moment. You will stay late to finish a project, and your co-worker will take the credit. You will be the best parent you can be, and your child will scream that they hate you. You will write a brilliant book, and it will get 1-star reviews from people who didn't read it. The ego demands justice. Look at me. Look what I did. You must silence that voice. You must reach a place where the effort is enough. Think of the craftsman in the Middle Ages working on a cathedral. He is carving a gargoyle that will be placed on a roof 300 feet in the air. No one will ever see the detail of that carving. There are no drones, no cameras. It will be hidden by the clouds. But he carves it perfectly anyway. He carves it for God, or he carves it for himself, or he carves it simply because he is a carver, and that is what carvers do. That is the standard. Do the work because it is your duty. Do the work because it respects your own talent. Do the work because you are a professional. If the rewards come, fine. Accept them, but don't trust them. If the rewards don't come, fine. You need them anyway. There's a tremendous power in this. When you stop needing credit, you become dangerous. You become ungovernable. You can speak the truth because you aren't afraid of losing your status. You can take risks because you aren't doing it for the applause. Belisarius died in obscurity, but he died with his soul intact. Justinian died in a palace, but he died a prisoner of his own fear. Who really won? Stop checking the scoreboard. The scoreboard is broken. Look at your hands. Look at the work. Is it good? Is it true? Did you give everything? The crash is coming. We have spent this book trying to avoid it. We have tried to tame the ego, to learn from others, to stay humble. But sometimes the ego is too strong. Sometimes the shell is too thick. Sometimes the only way for the light to get in is for the structure to collapse completely. In the movie Fight Club, there is a scene where Brad Pitt's character grabs the narrator's hand and pours chemical lye on it. It burns. It melts the skin. The narrator tries to pull away, to escape the pain, to go to his happy place. But Pitt holds him there. He screams. It's only after we've lost everything that we're free to do anything. This is the Fight Club moment. It is the moment of impact. It is rock bottom. Society tells us that rock bottom is the worst place you can be. It is the place of shame. It is the bankruptcy, the divorce, the firing, the public scandal, the rehab center. We spend our lives running away from rock bottom. But for the person suffering from the disease of ego, rock bottom is not a tragedy. It is a gift. Ego is a construction. It is a house of cards we build to convince ourselves and others that we are special. We spend all our energy protecting this house. We lie to keep it standing. We manipulate. We deny reality. Rock bottom is the wind that blows the house down. When you're at the bottom, the lies stop. You can't pretend you are a financial genius when the bank takes your house. You can't pretend you are a good husband when your wife leaves. You can't pretend you are in control when you are in a jail cell. The crash strips away the image and leaves you with the truth. And the truth is a solid foundation. You can build on truth. You cannot build on lies. Look at J.K. Rowling. Before she was a billionaire author, she was a failure. She was a single mother living on welfare. Her marriage had imploded. She had no job. She was as low as you can get in modern Britain, without being homeless. She described this moment not as a nightmare, but as a liberation. She said, "Rock bottom became a solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life." Why? Because she had nothing left to lose. The fear of failure was gone. She had already failed. The energy she used to spend on pretending was now free to be poured into her work. She wrote Harry Potter because that was all she had. Or look at Steve Jobs. In 1985, he was fired from Apple, the company he founded. It was a public humiliation. He was stripped of his power. He could have retired. He could have sued. Instead, he accepted the crash. He realized that the heaviness of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. He started next. He bought Pixar. He rediscovered his creativity. When he returned to Apple years later, he wasn't the arrogant boy who got fired. He was the tempered leader who saved the company. He needed the crash to become the king.